When you grow old, 7 ways to handle people who don't respect you. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone cuts you off, dismisses your words, or speaks to you as if your years of wisdom mean nothing? Maybe it's a younger relative who rolls their eyes when you share a life lesson, or a stranger who talks over you as if you're invisible. It stings, doesn't it? Here's the hard truth: respect isn't guaranteed with age, and if you've ever felt overlooked, brushed aside, or treated like you don't matter, you're not alone. But let me tell you something even more powerful. Respect is not something you ask for, it's something you command. And you don't do it with anger, arguments, or trying to prove your worth. You do it with presence, silence, and unshakable self-respect. In today's video, I'm going to share 7 powerful ways to handle disrespect without losing your dignity, your peace, or your confidence. These strategies will help you stand tall in any situation, whether it's a dismissive remark, an impatient attitude, or someone who refuses to see your value. If you're ready to reclaim your power, stay with me. And if this resonates with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because this message deserves to be heard. 1. The power of the silent stare. Confucius once said, "Silence is a true friend who never betrays." The ancient sages understood that words have power, but silence can be even more formidable. In the courts of ancient China, when an official made a foolish remark in front of the emperor, the wisest ministers did not correct him outright. Instead, they would remain silent, their expressions calm but piercing. That silence, heavy with meaning, was often more effective than any rebuke. It forced the speaker to reflect, to recognize their misstep without confrontation. This principle holds true today. Disrespectful people thrive on reaction. They want you to fight, to argue, to lower yourself to their level. But when you hold their gaze with quiet strength, something shifts. You are no longer engaging in their game. Instead, you force them to confront their own behavior, to sit with the weight of their words. It is in that silence that true power is revealed. I remember the moment clearly, the warm hum of conversation at a family dinner, the clinking of silverware against porcelain plates, the low glow of the chandelier overhead. It was the kind of gathering where people spoke over one another, laughter filled the air, and opinions flowed as freely as the wine. I had been sharing a story, one from my youth, one of struggle, perseverance, and hard-earned wisdom. And then, a voice cut through the warmth like a cold wind. Yeah, my grandson scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. But things are different now. That kind of thinking is outdated. The words hit me harder than I expected. Not because I hadn't heard them before, I had, from many young people who believed the world had no more use for the wisdom of those who came before them, but because they came from him. A boy I had held as a baby, a boy I had once soothed when he scraped his knees, a boy I had watched grow into a man who now believed my experiences were nothing more than relics of a bygone era. I felt the eyes of the table shift toward me, waiting, expecting a response. I could have argued, I could have explained, I could have reminded him that everything he enjoys today, the freedoms, the luxuries, the choices, were built upon the backs of those who came before him. But I did none of those things. Instead, I put down my fork and met his gaze. The table grew silent, conversations trickled to a stop, forks hovered in midair. I didn't frown, didn't narrow my eyes in anger, I just looked. A deep, steady, unblinking stare that held the weight of my years, my lessons, my patience. A look that said, "I have nothing to prove to you, but one day you will understand." He shifted in his chair, uncomfortable. The smirk that had danced so confidently on his lips just moments before faltered. The silence stretched between us, thick and unmoving, until he finally looked away, and in that moment I knew I had won, not in the way he might define victory, not with a sharp retort or a clever rebuttal, but in a deeper, more meaningful way. He would remember this moment. Perhaps not today, not tomorrow, but someday, when he finds himself in my position, when he faces a younger version of himself who dismisses his words, he will understand. Because wisdom is not a loud, clanging thing. It is not found in shouting or proving a point. It is in the quiet, in the steady presence of those who have lived long enough to know that time is the greatest teacher of all. The world today is quick to dismiss the past, to believe that new ideas always replace old ones. But the foundations of respect, dignity, and patience do not age. The younger generations may not always see it yet, but that does not mean they never will. And so I ask you, Have you ever chosen silence over argument? Have you ever let your presence speak louder than words? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you've handled disrespect with quiet strength. 2. Silence as your strongest answer. The great philosopher Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." The Stoics believed that the most powerful response to insults was no response at all. In ancient Rome, when an orator tried to humiliate the great philosopher Cato in front of the Senate, Cato merely smiled and said nothing. The silence was more unsettling than any argument, leaving his opponent grasping for control of the moment. This wisdom remains true today. When someone speaks in rudeness, they expect a reaction. They want you to lower yourself to their level, but when you respond with silence, you take away their power. Their words become nothing more than empty noise hanging in the air, exposed for what they truly are: weak, petty, and meaningless. There was a time when words had meaning, when a man's promise was his bond, and a woman's wisdom was revered. But today, people talk just to hear themselves speak. They throw words like weapons, careless and cruel, as if the louder they are, the more right they become. I learned long ago that not every battle is worth fighting. Some are won simply by refusing to step onto the battlefield. It happened at the grocery store not long ago. I was standing in line waiting my turn when I heard a voice behind me, sharp, irritated, impatient. "Oh, come on," the woman huffed under her breath, loud enough for me to hear. "How long does it take?" I didn't turn. The cashier was young, maybe 16, struggling to bag the groceries and handle the register at the same time. She fumbled with the scanner, her face turning red as the machine beeped in protest. I could see her hands shaking. The woman behind me tapped her foot, sighed, muttered something else I didn't catch. I could have turned around. I could have told her to be patient, to remember that once upon a time, she too was young and learning. I could have reminded her that we all move at different speeds, that no one in this store was in such a rush that a few extra seconds would ruin their day. But I didn't. I stood still, said nothing, and in that silence something shifted. The young cashier finally looked up, eyes darting toward me, nervous and apologetic. She expected frustration, but I only gave her a small nod, a reassurance that she was doing just fine. The woman behind me, however, grew uncomfortable. I could feel it, the tension in her shoulders, the way she crossed her arms and shifted her weight. She had expected a reaction, maybe even an argument, but she was met with nothing. Silence is a mirror. It forces people to see themselves, and sometimes they don't like what they see. By the time my groceries were bagged, the woman had stopped muttering. Her impatience had nowhere to go. As I walked away, I glanced back and saw her tapping at her phone, avoiding the cashier's gaze. Perhaps she had realized what I already knew. Her frustration wasn't about the slow line. It was about herself. We live in a world where everyone demands to be heard, where people mistake volume for importance, anger for strength. But the truth is, the strongest people don't always speak. They listen. They watch. And when necessary, they say nothing at all. The next time someone tries to pull you into their negativity, whether it's a rude comment, an impatient sigh, or a condescending remark, remember this: not every fight is worth your energy. Not every insult deserves your voice. Because silence speaks louder than anger, and in that silence you hold all the power. Have you ever chosen to stay silent when someone tried to provoke you? How did it change the situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experience in the comments. Let's talk about the strength found in saying nothing. 3. Stop explaining yourself. The great Lao Tzu once said, "Care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner." In ancient China, a wise man lived in a small village, known for his peaceful nature and simple way of life. One day, the villagers noticed that he no longer attended the grand feasts or participated in their traditions as he once did. Concerned, they approached him. "Why have you stopped joining us?" they asked. The old man smiled and replied, "Because this is what works for me now." His words puzzled them, for they had expected explanations, justifications, but he offered none, and so, with no argument to challenge, they accepted his choice. The wise man understood what many struggle to grasp today: you owe no one an explanation for living life on your own terms. For years, I was the one who held our family together, the one who cooked the holiday meals, sent out the invitations, made sure that even the most distant relatives felt welcome. My home was the gathering place, filled with warmth, laughter, and the scent of slow-roasted meals. And then, one year, I stopped. It wasn't dramatic. There was no grand announcement, no falling out, just a quiet decision, made for the sake of my own peace. The weight of the gatherings had become too much. The long hours on my feet, the stress of planning, the endless conversations that drained rather than fulfilled me. So when the phone calls came, when the questions started, "Why aren't you hosting this year? Are you feeling all right? But we've always done it at your house," I simply said, "This is what works for me now." At first there was silence, then protests. "But you always host. It won't be the same. We can't just change things now." I could have explained, I could have told them about my aching back, my tired hands, the quiet exhaustion that settled in my bones. I could have reminded them that I had spent decades giving, hosting, accommodating, but why? I owed them nothing. So I repeated, with quiet certainty, "This is what works for me now." No excuses, no long-winded justifications, just a truth too solid to be questioned. Some didn't like it. I could hear the disapproval in their voices, feel the subtle guilt tripping beneath their words. But it didn't matter, because I had finally learned something that took me a lifetime to understand. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment you reclaim your freedom. The world today is filled with demands for justification. If you change your habits, people want to know why. If you set boundaries, they push back. Society expects an explanation for every choice, as if your decisions require permission from anyone but yourself. But they don't. There is power in simple, quiet certainty. When people realize they cannot sway you, they either accept your decision or reveal their true nature. Those who truly respect you will support you without question. Those who don't were never on your side to begin with. I still get invitations. Some family members took longer to understand than others. But every year I sit in my quiet home, with a book in my hands and peace in my heart, knowing that I have made the right choice. So I ask you, how often do you find yourself justifying your decisions to others? Have you ever simply said, "This is what works for me now," and let that be enough? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how you've learned to stand firm in your choices without apology. 4. Keep your distance from those who drain you. The great philosopher Socrates was once asked why he rarely engaged with people who spoke ill of him. He replied with a question: "If someone hands you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The student answered, "To the giver, of course." Socrates nodded. "Then if someone gives you their negativity and you refuse to accept it, to whom does it belong?" The answer is clear. Some people thrive on criticism, on finding fault, on draining the energy of those around them. But you do not have to accept their gift of negativity. The wisest response is not to argue but to walk away. There was a time in my life when I mistook obligation for loyalty. I believed that if someone had been in my life for years, whether they were family, an old friend, or a colleague, then I had to endure their presence no matter how much they drained me. I was wrong. It took me nearly a lifetime to understand that not everyone deserves a seat at my table. There was a friend I had known for decades, a woman I had once trusted, laughed with, shared secrets with. But over the years, I began to notice something. She never had a kind word to say. If I spoke of an accomplishment, she minimized it. If I shared my dreams, she found ways to poke holes in them. If I confided my struggles, she turned them into gossip. And yet, I stayed. Because we had history. Because I told myself this is just how she is. Because I thought that letting go meant I was being selfish. Then one day, something shifted. We were having coffee, and she made yet another remark, something subtle, something meant to sting but disguised as a joke. I felt it land, but this time I did not laugh, I did not argue, I did not explain why it hurt. I simply looked at her, took a slow sip of my coffee, and said, "I think I'm done here." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" I placed my cup down gently. "I mean, I'm done explaining myself, done defending myself, done making excuses for a friendship that doesn't feel like one anymore." She scoffed, called me dramatic, said I was overreacting. But I didn't engage. I didn't fight to be understood. I simply left. At first I felt guilt. Years of conditioning will do that to you. But then something happened. I felt lighter. The silence that followed wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. The air around me seemed clearer, my thoughts felt unburdened. I had removed the weight that I had carried for far too long, and do you know what happened next? Nothing. She did not reach out, she did not try to mend what had broken, and that told me everything I needed to know. She had never valued me, only what I tolerated. We live in a world that tells us to keep the peace, to endure, to overlook the wounds that others inflict in the name of love or loyalty. But true peace isn't found in enduring negativity, it's found in walking away from it. So I ask you this, who in your life drains you? Who makes you feel small, unheard, unworthy? And more importantly, what would happen if you simply let go? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever walked away from a toxic relationship? How did it change your life? Let's talk about the freedom that comes from choosing peace over obligation. 5. Walk with your head held high. The great Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, once wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He knew that the way we carry ourselves dictates the way the world treats us. In ancient Greece, a Stoic philosopher named Zeno of Citium was often mocked for his simple robes and lack of wealth. One day a man jeered at him in the marketplace, ridiculing his appearance. Zeno did not respond with anger. Instead, he stood tall, adjusted his robe and walked on, unbothered. The man's laughter faded into silence, powerless against the philosopher's calm self-assurance. The lesson is clear. Confidence isn't about proving your worth, it's about knowing it. I still remember the sting of those words. It was a warm afternoon at the grocery store, and I was walking down the aisle when a young man, barely in his 20s, brushed past me and muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Move faster, old man." I felt it, the sharp, immediate urge to correct him, to remind him that I was once strong, quick, unshakable, that the years in my bones were earned, not something to be mocked. But then I caught myself. Instead of snapping back, instead of proving myself to someone who knew nothing of the roads I had walked, I did something different. I straightened my back. I lifted my chin. And I walked forward, not with anger, not with wounded pride, but with the quiet power of someone who knows exactly who they are. And do you know what happened? Nothing. He moved on. His words lost their weight the moment I refused to carry them. You see, people who disrespect others are often weak themselves. They try to make others feel small because, deep down, they are the ones struggling with their own worth. They expect you to react, to shrink, to argue, to show that their words have power over you. But when you refuse to engage, when you carry yourself with dignity, you take that power away. I've seen it too many times, good people, strong people, letting others dictate how they feel. A passing insult, a dismissive remark, a cruel joke. Suddenly their entire day is ruined. But why? Why give that much power to someone who doesn't deserve it? I wasn't always this way. There was a time when I let the opinions of others shape me, when I bent over backward trying to prove that I was still sharp, still useful, still worthy. But life teaches you if you're willing to listen. One day, I woke up and realized that I am not here to meet anyone else's standards. My worth isn't tied to how fast I move, how youthful I look, or how much I keep up with the ever-changing world. My worth is in my wisdom, in my resilience, in the quiet strength of a life well lived. And so, I walk with my head held high, not because I am trying to prove something, but because I have nothing to prove. The world will always have something to say about you, whether you are young, old, rich, poor, successful, struggling. There will always be voices eager to make you feel small, but they only succeed if you let them. So, the next time someone tries to belittle you, I want you to do something. Don't argue, don't shrink, just stand tall, look forward, and walk on. And if you've ever had a moment like this, a time when you chose dignity over reaction, I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments, and let's remind the world that self-respect is the greatest strength of all. 6. Teach people how to treat you. Confucius once said, "Respect yourself and others will respect you." In ancient China, a noble scholar named Meng learned this lesson the hard way. He was known for his kindness, but people took advantage of his generosity. interrupting his studies, demanding his time, and disregarding his personal space. One day, an elder monk visited him and observed his frustration. The monk smiled and placed a small stone in Meng's palm. "Hold this stone tightly," he instructed. Meng clenched his fist. After a moment, the monk asked, "Now open your hand." Meng did, and saw that the once smooth stone was now covered in sweat, slipping from his grasp. The monk chuckled. "Respect is like this stone. Hold it too loosely, and people take it from you. Hold it too tightly, and you lose your own peace. Balance is the key." Meng understood. That day he began setting boundaries, and as he did, he noticed something. People didn't abandon him, they respected him more. For most of my life, I thought being agreeable was the same as being kind. I thought saying yes made me dependable, that going along with what others wanted made me easier to love. But let me tell you something, when you don't teach people how to treat you, they decide for themselves, and more often than not, they decide in ways that suit them, not you. I had a friend, let's call her Mary. We'd known each other since we were young, and for as long as I could remember, she had a habit of calling me whenever she wanted, showing up unannounced, and expecting me to drop whatever I was doing for her. At first, I didn't mind. That's what friends do, right? They help each other. But then, I noticed something. Mary never asked if I was busy, never considered if I was tired, and the few times I hesitated or told her I had plans, she'd guilt-trip me. "Oh, come on, you're not doing anything important." One day, it hit me. I had taught her that my time was not valuable. That evening, she called, "I need to vent. I'm coming over." For the first time in years, I didn't say okay. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "Mary, I love you, but I need you to call ahead before dropping by. I have my own schedule too." Silence. Then laughter. "Since when do you care about schedules?" I felt the old guilt creeping in, but I held my ground. Since always, I just never said it before. She wasn't happy. She huffed and mumbled something about how I'd changed. But I didn't argue. I simply said, "This is how it needs to be." And do you know what happened? She stopped showing up unannounced. People push as far as you let them. If you don't set the boundary, they won't set it for you. Now, I won't lie, some people don't like it when you start enforcing boundaries. They liked the old version of you better, the one who always said yes, the one who didn't ask for respect, but the people who truly care about you, they adjust. I wish I had learned this lesson earlier. Respect isn't something you beg for, it's something you expect, something you show through your actions. So I ask you, where in your life do you need to set a boundary? Where have you allowed people to take more than they should? Drop a comment below. Tell me a time when you finally stood up for yourself. How did it change things? Let's talk about the power of knowing your worth. 7. Remember, respect starts with you. The great Buddha once said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." In ancient India, there was a man who devoted his entire life to serving others. He gave food to the hungry, shelter to the homeless, and his time to anyone who asked. But, over time, he noticed something. People kept taking, but no one ever gave back. One day, an old sage visited him and asked, "What fills your cup?" The man looked confused. "I don't need my cup filled, I serve others." The sage smiled and took the empty cup from his hands. He tipped it over. Nothing came out. If you give without refilling your own cup, soon you will have nothing left to give, and yet people will still ask for more. From that day on, the man changed. He still gave, but he also took care of himself, and he found something unexpected. When he valued himself, others valued him too. For years I lived by one rule: make everyone happy. I said yes when I wanted to say no. I put others first even when it drained me. I let people interrupt, dismiss, and overlook me, because I thought, that's what good people do. Then, one afternoon, something happened that changed me forever. I was sitting in my own living room, listening to my daughter-in-law talk about weekend plans. She had just invited herself and her kids over, again. Not once did she ask if I was free. It was simply assumed that I would accommodate. And I almost did. The words, "of course, dear," were on the tip of my tongue, but before I could speak, my grandson tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma, do you want them to come over?" No one had ever asked me that before. I looked around the room, at the people who had grown used to me bending, shifting, making space for them, never stopping to ask if I had space for myself. And for the first time in my life, I answered honestly, "Not this weekend. I need some time for myself." The room went silent. My daughter-in-law blinked. "Oh, okay." That was it. No argument, no resentment, just acceptance, and I realized something. Respect starts with me. The world teaches us to be selfless, to be accommodating, to serve without expectation. But here's the truth. If you don't respect your own time, your own boundaries, your own worth, why should anyone else? When I started treating myself with respect, something incredible happened. People adjusted. They started asking before making demands. They stopped assuming I would always say yes. And the ones who didn't, they faded away. Because when you value yourself, people either rise to meet your standards or disappear. It took me a lifetime to learn this. But you don't have to wait as long as I did. Start today. Stop explaining. Stop overgiving. Stop allowing people to take more than you're willing to give, and watch how the world shifts around you. Now tell me, have you ever had a moment where you finally put yourself first? How did it change your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about the power of self-respect. At the end of the day, respect isn't something you ask for, it's something you embody. It starts with how you carry yourself, how you set boundaries, and how you show the world what you will and will not accept. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop chasing approval, stop tolerating disrespect, you take your power back. And when you hold yourself in high regard, others will either rise to meet your standards or fade away. So, as you move forward, remember this. You are not here to make everyone comfortable. You are here to live your life fully, on your terms. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a moment where you chose self-respect over pleasing others? How did it change the way people treated you? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this message resonated with you, give this video a like, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because together, we're building a community of wisdom, strength, and self-worth. Thank you for watching, and remember, respect always starts with you.